Oh my, oh my, oh my. Look everyone, it's Ballistic, Ecks versus Sever. The best movie ever made. Okay, if you know anything about this movie, it's the fact that it has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. But there's a lot of movies with a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. So is it really that bad? So there's this guy called Gant, and you can tell by his outfit that he's clearly the villain of the movie. So Gant, he has this son, and then he has a nanobot that kills people, and then he puts the nanobot that kills people into his son, I think, to transport it, but I'm not really sure why. But before he can get the nanobot from his son, Sever kidnaps his son so she can get the nanobot. And then the FBI director goes to Ecks and he's like, you gotta versus Sever. And Ecks is all like, well, I don't wanna versus Sever. And then the FBI director is like, but if you versus Sever, I'll tell you about your dead wife who's actually alive. So then Ecks goes to versus Sever. They do that, I guess. What else happened? Gant's wife is actually X's wife. That name sucks. And their son, who's the whitest kid you know, is somehow their kid. I guess Gant separately tricked both Ecks and his wife that they were each dead in a car explosion. You'd think their in-laws would have questioned what the fuck is going on, but I guess it doesn't matter. Sever's a good guy. They both fight Gant and his goons in a train yard, and it's really exciting. Super exciting stuff. Oh, and then Sever shoots Gant with the nanobot and he dies. The end. Guess it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Maybe it's worth like a percent. But still really boring, so I would advise against watching it. But of course, the movie itself is not important. It's how it pertains to the GBA. Enter Ecks vs. Sever, developed by Crawfish and published by BAM Entertainment. This was originally going to be a port of a PS2 game of the same name before it was cancelled. At least that's what Unseen64 says. I sincerely doubt that a bit of cursory research would lead me to an entirely different conclusion about that. Oh hey, what's that over there? In the shadow? A 4? That's weird. Well, anyways. The GBA is a pretty fascinating specimen. It came out at a time where people were really trying to push the technical side of video games. But in direct contrast to that, the GBA had really weak hardware. It was more or less a souped up Super Nintendo. A Super Nintendo, if you will. Even with these restrictions, some developers still strive to push the hardware. And Ecks vs. Sever is a pretty early example of one of these powerhouse games for the system. It wasn't the first FPS game on GBA. Doom and Backtrack preceded it, but it was the first original FPS game on the platform. Well, let's dig into it. If you consider this game is based on a movie, you would expect it to follow the same plot, at least try to. However, in this case, there's some pretty key differences. This game was actively being worked on while they were still rewriting the script for the movie. The developers initially tried to keep up, but eventually they just said fuck it and stuck with one version. I have to say this earlier version of the plot is way better. Instead of it being centered around a stupid MacGuffin that is the nanobot, it's about the FBI and NSA using Ecks and Sever as a power play against each other. Ultimately, that ends up blowing up in their faces as Ecks and Sever proceed to turn the city into a war zone. Unfortunately, the whole story is presented in text, but I mean, what are you gonna do? It is a GBA game after all. The ending is pretty funny though. You have exposed the truth. You are owed a debt of gratitude by the government of this nation. Our citizens live in peace, freedom, and prosperity because heroes like you risk your lives.
You got away with it this time, Ecks.
Mr. X, report for duty in 21 days.
Why 21 days? Another disciplinary panel? Psych tests? Sensitivity training?
Quality time, Mr. X. Your wife and child are alive and well.
For too long, I've lived with guilt and grief. I thought they were dead. I thought I was responsible. For too long, they've been lost to me. And to maximize your effectiveness, trust me, I'm a lawyer. You're just a tool of the state, Ecks. Disposable, expendable. We use you, then we spit you out.
Counsel, your performance during this inquiry has been lamentable. You're fired.
But
Just fire him. Just fire him on the spot. That's how every court movie should end. Prosecutor, fuck you. You're fired. The actual game, it's alright. It was certainly impressive for the time, but even given its niche quality as a GBA FPS game, it would ultimately falter against others of its kind. Weapon variety is decent, if not standard. Pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, and holy shit, is that a G11? Yeah, give me that Kraut space magic, yeah. 2000 round RPM burst, caseless ammunition, bullpup design. And you have to be a fucking clockmaker to do maintenance on it, yeah. It's even the best weapon in the game. It's better than the minigun and the grenade launcher. You gotta go with the G11, dude. The gameplay is fine. It's quite good even against the weaker enemies. That being said, when the game starts introducing bullet sponges, a lot of firefights devolve into darting back and forth behind a wall or just trading blows. In fact, the farther you get into the game, the worse it gets. It's subject to extreme difficulty spikes, and they employ a lot of nasty tricks, like putting a shit ton of enemies at the end of the level, and just being really frugal with health and ammo pickups. It's very clear to me that this is just padding. A lot of these older portable games suffer from this, especially ones that push the hardware. The levels are often pretty small just due to the size of the cartridge. This wouldn't be horrible, but of course, like a lot of GBA games, it uses a password system. That means no checkpoints whatsoever. You fuck up, it's back to the start of the level. Luckily, I can circumvent this with save states, but by the end, I was save stating like a motherfucker. I can't imagine playing this game on actual hardware. The environments are pretty bland too, mostly just a bunch of gray warehouses. A lot of the same assets end up getting used over and over again, making a lot of these levels blend together. Combined with the harsh difficulty, it became a chore to get through the later half of the game. Given this, I only play a little bit of Sever's campaign, just to see what it was like. And well, it was more of the same. Exactly the same, actually. It's just the same levels except from Sever's perspective. This is only really interesting when you run into Ecks because you get to see the boss fight play out from a different perspective. It served as more bang for your buck back in the day, but I don't see any reason to play her campaign. So, I mean, yeah, pretty good game for the time. Not a whole lot of reasons to play it now, though. Credit where credit is due, it was super impressive for 2001. Wait, this came out in 2001? That can't be right. No, it is correct. November 21st, 2001. Why would they release it so early? The movie didn't even come out until September of 2002. This game would have been nearly completed by the time they were starting principal photography. Hold on, was the PS2 game supposed to come out this early? Let me check out that Unseen 64 article. No, the PS2 version didn't even start development until 2002. Wait a minute, it says right here the GBA game was also released in 2002. That's not right, that must be a typo or something. Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever. The GBA game was just called Ecks vs. Sever. So hold on. We have a movie that was released in 2002, a game based on it that came out almost a full year before it, a proper tie-in that was going to miss the release and ultimately be cancelled. What, so are they just going to release nothing? This can only mean one thing. They made another GBA game! Yes, if you read the title, you would know that there were two of these games. Either BAM knew the PS2 version would not be released in time, or this was supposed to be a counterpart to the PS2 game. We'll never know. But this did end up releasing alongside the movie. What a bizarre situation. I can't really think of another example of two completely different games made by the exact same people tying into the same movie. On the GBA, no less. Now supposedly, since this game started development after the script was finalized, it should actually tie into the events of the movie, right? This is the conception that most sources have, at least. So is that true? Not at all. Instead, it takes place after the events of the movie. Ecks and Sever are back in their respective agencies working together to stop a World War III scenario. The connection to the movie is kept extremely vague. I'm assuming this was an attempt to also have it serve as a sequel to the previous GBA game, as well as the movie. Why the fuck did I even watch this? I'm about to go ballistic. Well, the movie's plot sucks, so I'm fine with that. But how's the game? It's good. Like, really good. It's a complete improvement over the first game, and is probably the best FPS game on the platform. Okay, well, at least it's the best original FPS game on the platform. There's more variety in weapons and levels, sound effects are improved. And it has more enemy variety. And it has aiming. Yes, this GBA FPS game has proper aiming. You can even headshot people. It has friendly NPCs that you need to escort around, and they don't suck. They follow you pretty well, and you can ask them to wait where they are if need be. This might seem small, but again, this is a GBA game. The game's difficulty has been balanced way better. And while it can still be a hard game, it doesn't feel like the difficulty is just there to pad the runtime. Speaking of padding, Sever's section of the game is no longer just a different perspective on the same levels. All of her levels are completely different and feel distinct from X's. Given this, I ended up playing through both campaigns this time around. X's campaign is definitely the better of the two. I think it has just more interesting environments. Also, Sever's campaign kind of skips out on the ammo and health pickups, but given that, it's still completely doable. The game is a lot shorter than its predecessor, but now it's more consistently fun. It's truly amazing they were able to pull this off in just 10 months, and I would actually recommend playing this one. Okay, I've realized that I've just become the leading expert on Ecks vs. Sever, and that is a fate far worse than death, so I think I'm gonna leave before I make things worse. See ya!